People who have attended a wedding, what is your wedding guest from hell story? So, literally 5 minutes before our wedding ceremony started, my aunt came up to me, the bride, and told me that my grandfather had cancer and mostly a few months to live. I had not known, but seeing him that morning, I saw that he was not well. My parents and sister had unnecessarily kept it from me before the wedding. Auntie Dearest just waltzed up to me and said, "If I were you, I would not be so happy. Did you know that your grandfather is dying?" I cannot remember, but apparently I replied, "Well, let me get married first and then we'll take care of this." Y'all, I am so happy we're doing a wedding stories video. These always bring out the crazies, and this is specifically for the crazies. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Also, this isn't AI, you dumb idiots. We're not even a minute in and I'm calling out the dummies. Anyway, let's get into it. Next story. So, crap-faced mother of the groom, who actually stood up when the preacher said, "Speak now." The father dragged her out with her kicking and screaming, literally kicking and screaming at him while she slurred her words. She yelled and screamed all of the way out the door until more family got her subdued and took her home. She was pissed because her son was marrying a Laotian girl. Next story. Maid of honor / sister of the bride spent 20 minutes talking about how nerdy the groom was, how she and all of her friends couldn't believe when they started dating, mentioned going home with a new guy every week, brought up how her mom and dad didn't like his parents for some effing reason. She was underage and clearly drunk at a dry wedding, which, what the hell? The best man managed to salvage the situation by delivering literally the best man speech I've ever heard. Edit. A few people asked what made the speech great, and I posted this reply way down the thread, but here it is. The best man was the bride's brother, who had been friends with the groom for a long time, and he mentioned how he had noticed that the groom always respected every woman he dated. The best man had known that his sister had always fancied the groom, so when they started dating, he had no qualms about whether his friend would be good to his sister. There were some appropriate jokes the kind brothers would share, some anecdotes, but it was mostly about how the groom had always been the best man's brother, and now they truly were brothers. And he invited us to toast with iced tea or lemonade or Arnold Palmer in their union. It was a good speech, but it was made even better by the train wreck of a speech that had come before. Next story. A wedding planner told me this story. Apparently, right before the wedding, the planner found the maid of honor passed out with prescription bottles all over. She had tried to take her own life right before the ceremony. They had to call an ambulance and get her out of there. Planner did this all without the bride noticing. Bride asked later the planner where her maid of honor went, and they told her that she went home sick. Bride found out the day after her wedding. Edit. Just to add some more info, the planner talked and handled this situation with the rest of the wedding party and our bride's parents. She wasn't just making the call herself not to tell the bride. The planner, bride's friends, and family probably came to an agreement. Also, this is California, where weddings probably range from $30,000 to $100,000, unless that wedding took place in someone's home, backyard, etc., but from what I recall, it didn't. I also believe bride and groom's parents paid for the wedding. Next story. One mentioned this story in a previous thread. I photographed a wedding back in 2015, wherein during his speech at the reception, the best man inadvertently revealed to the 200+ guests that the bride was pregnant. Up until that point, only a very select few people knew. The look of pure rage, shock, embarrassment she gave him was staggering. And then too, many moons ago, I was a guest at a wedding, and during the reception, one of the bridesmaids got so pissy drunk that she bum rushed the very full men's room to see what was happening and to take a piss, in one of the commodes, I presume. She had to be helped out of the men's room. So I've been meaning to mention this for a while now, but does anybody notice how Redditors sometimes will be like, "Oh, I told this story before. Warning, I told this story before." Or, "Hey, I told this story 8 years ago, FYI," as if anyone's probably going to remember? But then I was thinking about it, I'm pretty sure I used to do that too. I don't know why that is. Maybe because your Reddit comments are like visible, so someone might be like, "Oh, this is a repost?" I don't know. This is just a very weird side thing that I notice Redditors do while doing these videos. But anyway, next story. So, it was well known that the mother-in-law wasn't a fan of the bride. On the wedding day, she turned up late in a pale peach gown that may as well have been white and looked exactly like a wedding gown. She was up and about at the church until the wedding march started to play, at which time she hopped out of the back and walked quickly up the aisle, basically in front of the bride, to take her seat at the front. She started making this horrendous crying sound as soon as the wedding vows started, and didn't stop until the pastor presented the couple as husband and wife. She promptly ran to the front and used her elbow to move the bride before throwing herself into the arms of the groom. At the photo shoot afterwards, she kept trying to exclude the bride from the pictures and posed with no less than 10 photos of just her and her son. So every pose he did with his bride, his mom tried to recreate. I wasn't invited to the reception, but heard she gave a doozy of a wedding speech about how she couldn't believe the bride was stealing her only baby and implied quite strongly that the son only married her because she was pregnant. Bear in mind, they were together for 5 years. Next story. I've told this story before, but never tire of it because it still pisses me off. I was a bridemaid for my college BFF's wedding. She was engaged to a guy whose parents had always been Catholic, but suddenly got super serious about it a few years prior. This including having a real wedding in a Catholic church after they'd been married for 25 years because their original wedding had been at City Hall. These parents were initially thrilled about the engagement, however, until bride and groom said they would be having the wedding at a campground, not in a Catholic church. They put a lot of pressure on the couple to change their minds, but they didn't budge. The father eventually said he would not be attending and refused to let the groom's younger brother be ring bearer. The mom, however, said she would go, even if she didn't agree with it. When we got to the campground, all arrangements were made with the idea that the groom's mother would be there, including who would walk her to her seat, where she'd sit at the reception, etc. And there's no cell reception at this campground, and the only phone line is at the camp office. About an hour before the wedding, the phone rang endlessly until one of the groomsmen was able to reach it and heard the groom's dad say, "Put the groom on the phone." The groom then answered, and his father said, "Your mother will not be attending your wedding because this is an abomination," and then hangs up. I was with the bride when she found out about this. She was bawling angry, rage-filled tears until about 10 minutes before the wedding was supposed to start. Next story. My wife's and my wedding didn't have too much drama. No kids allowed. It was stated explicitly on the invitation. We wanted everyone to have a good time and to leave the kids at home. All of our friends knew, understood, and appreciated the opportunity to cut loose. Everyone except the wife of one of my wife's friends from high school. "We really want to bring little what's-her-name. She's quiet." "Nope, no kids." "Are you sure? We've never been to Atlanta and we'd love to bring her with us." "Nope, no kids. No exceptions." And well, guess who brought their kid with them to Atlanta? One of my wife's other friends tipped us off because they were in the same hotel. So we got a hold of them and told them that she couldn't come. "But we bought a really cute dress and we don't have a sitter." "She can wear it in the hotel room while you send your husband to the wedding." And to his credit, her friend had tried over and over again to convince his wife to leave the kid at home with his mom, but she thought she could force the issue. Instead, she got to buy a dress to hang out in a hotel room with her daughter. Next story. Nothing too outrageous, but at one of my best friend's weddings, his drunk coworker tried to F literally everyone there. Tried to make out with a bunch of his married friends, male and female, grinded on the 80-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair, pulled random family members into grindy dances. It was really awkward and everyone rejected her advances. Oh, and did I mention she had her husband there too? He basically just sat in a chair drinking beer, watching like he'd seen it a million times. Seemed like a real decent guy too. I felt bad for him. Worst, at my own wedding, was just a drunk girlfriend of a friend doing stripper moves in a short dress sans underwear, but that was possibly the most popular event at the wedding, so no harm done. Next story. Friend of my wife's wedding. My first clue that there would be shenanigans was the bar for the reception. It was an outdoor wedding, so the couple had rented a tent, in one corner of which the bar was placed. Above the bar was a sizable neon Bud Light sign. Now, this wouldn't strike me as funny if the wedding was at a club or something that generally has a dedicated bar, but it is a bit humorous that somebody willfully said the wedding needed a neon sign in a tent and actively ran extension cords to run it, but I digress. During the reception, I observed one individual who was clearly very intoxicated and trying to dance with every woman there. The redneckishness of the whole scene got to me, and I leaned over to my wife and I whispered, "I bet you $5 a fight breaks out." She hushed me and scowled that I would make such a suggestion at a joyous occasion. Then, 10 minutes later, the drunk guy must have hit on the wrong woman, because the next thing you know, some guy had picked up a metal folding chair and railed the drunk guy into next Tuesday, WWE style. I looked over to my wife, smiled, and said, "Called it." Next story. So this wasn't a rude guest. It was a rude bride and groom. They had a 5 p.m. reception with no food. None. Not even a cheese platter. They didn't warn us beforehand, so we didn't know to eat before going. The reception was in a very rural location, so we couldn't run anywhere to grab a bite. We had to write our address on a thank you note envelope, which I've seen before, but we were also directed to write our own thank you notes. Finally, at 9 p.m., I told my husband we had to leave because I'm starving and they wouldn't let us leave until we helped fold tables and chairs. Next story. The minister. Garden ceremony. He decided he should do a sermon on marriage with a heavy-handed emphasis on how women should submit to their husbands. I was minding the music in the back, and it was all I could do to keep from heaving a speaker at him. Then he got all wound up in his own bullcrap, forgot about the bride and groom standing in front of him, and decided that now was the time to issue an altar call for all those who wanted to come up right now and receive Jesus into their lives. The only one who responded was the lady who owned the venue. She marched right up the aisle, spoke to him in an angry whisper that everyone could hear. "No altar call! Finish the ceremony! No more sermons!" Gotta love the minister's reaction, though. He got all butthurt and pouty, finished up the ceremony in a monotone way, and then signed the license and huffed off. Next story. At a wedding where the reception was a potluck and the bride and groom were vegan, there was an open mic for friends of the bride and groom to say stuff. One of their friends said they always put their secret lard into all of the vegan dishes they made, including the one they brought for the wedding potluck. Booed out of the wedding. Next story. I've seen a few terrible guests before, one at my own wedding included, but the worst was a woman at my cousin's, the bride's wedding just this year. The woman was a plus one that came with one of the groom's family. Not in a relationship with them, just a friend, and as far as I know, I didn't know the happy couple very well. It started off in the church. She cried quite loudly to the point where people were actually turning to look at her. After the actual ceremony, we were informed that she was widowed early last year. Fair enough, though I did wonder why she'd put herself in such a highly emotional situation for people she barely knew, but to each their own. Then came the dinner. Rather tipsy from the pre-dinner cocktails whilst the wedding party did their photos, she stood up to make her own speech. The wedding itself was a fairly relaxed affair, so although a little odd, no one stopped her. She tearfully wished the bride and groom all the best because you never know when you can be ripped apart from the one you love. First dance for the bride and groom was cut short as the song reminded the widow of her dearly departed. Father-daughter dance also caused a scene because her daughter would never be able to do that with her father. Generally, it just brought the whole mood crashing down, and it felt like we were all treading on eggshells. She stole attention from the couple's big day and got a ton of sympathy from all of the guests. I felt for her. Losing her husband had to have been awful, but she essentially ruined someone's wedding, and no one was going to be the a-hole to call her out on it. Next story. There was this girl I worked with who was marrying her high school sweetheart. They didn't have much money to spend on the wedding, so the bride told me it was going to be pretty bare bones. I told her it was no big deal. After all, my parents got married on a $500 credit card, and here they are 35 years later still together, despite my mother's numerous attempts to murder my father. So, my girlfriend at the time and I arrived just as the reception was starting. Allow me to set the scene. Just inside the door, a 40-something woman is belting out, "You give love a bad name" on the karaoke machine. There are 2 trays of cold cuts from the grocery store, probably a dozen cases of Bud Light, and a stack of cups, so the people who don't want Bud Light can get some water from the drinking fountain in the hallway. Guess where the bulk of the budget went? So about 30 minutes later, the girlfriend and I went out to her car to roast a bone. On our way back, Bon Jovi chick is outside having a cigarette. She stopped my girlfriend to ask about her earrings and where she got them. "Oh, I got them at this cool piercing shop by the beach where they make all of their own jewelry." And then the lady says, "Do they just do earrings or other stuff? Because I just got these pierced and I'd love to find some cool studs to put in." She then yanked her dress down and popped out her giant fake boobies to show off her pierced nipples. Then a crowd formed for the viewing of the jugs. There were probably 8 or 9 women who came over to ask all sorts of questions. And here I am, the lone guy standing there looking at a Girls Gone Wild video happening in real time. Then she said, "Well, I got my clit pierced too, but you'll have to follow me up to the ladies' room to see that one. I ain't about to hike my dress up in the parking lot." Then my girlfriend and close to a dozen white trash girls trotted after this woman to the ladies' room, where they looked at her lady business. Next story. My wife's grandmother managed to insult every member of my immediate family and several other guests before the wedding even started. I refused to speak to her to this day. My wedding, by the way. Forgot to mention, this wasn't like a one-time thing she did that insulted everyone. She managed to do it individually, person by person, without much effort on her part. A specialized snowflake like insults all around. No way, OP. I'm gonna need some more details on what Grandma did here, because yes, she is an awful person, but she did it one by one. That is impressive. If evil, but still impressive. I want to know what she said. Was it racism? Sexism? Did she do digging on each person and say, "Hey, 14 years ago, your wife left you. Take this L"? I don't know. But Grandma, she had motive, and I want to know what it was. But anyway, next story. So, I don't know if this exactly counts, but the worst behavior I've ever seen at a wedding was my own behavior. I was 3 to 4 years old at the time, and I was the ring bearer at my favorite aunt's wedding. Well, apparently I carried the rings up and I got tired of standing around during the ceremony. So what's a kid to do? I put the pillow down, laid down on the pillow, and took a nap. Next story. My sister's wedding immediately comes to mind. Our youngest brother, 18 at the time, was drinking at the open bar. No big deal. Venue owner just asks that he doesn't take any drinks outside. My brother does just that. He got absolutely trashed in the parking lot, and the venue owner threatened to call the cops after warning him more than once. I guess he figured if he couldn't continue drinking, he'd invite his drug dealer friend to the reception and get high instead. The cops were eventually called, so he and his dealer friend take all the food they can manage to carry from the buffet table and flee. At least it wasn't a boring night. Next story. Not a bad thing, but very memorable. My brother got married in a Catholic church. He had 5 groomsmen. The priest hated when a phone went off and would embarrass the person if it happened during Mass. Anyway, a phone goes off. He glares at all of the groomsmen. They are furiously checking pockets. The groom is checking. The congregation is all checking, all in a panic. Then the priest reaches under his robe and pulls out his own phone and promptly shuts it off. The place went crazy. Next story. A friend of mine who is Indian has a family business where they run a few shops and gas stations. Yes, they are Patels. On the day of his wedding, his future mother-in-law bickered him and his family out because he didn't work in the morning at one of his stores. You know, like on the day of his wedding, he chose not to work behind the counter for once. Her logic was, how will he be a good husband to my precious daughter if he can't even handle his business? Obviously, this caused a huge crap storm, which probably was even deeper than I understood because of their culture and customs. However, the wedding did proceed, but the entire magic of the occasion was pretty much ruined. With time, I lost touch with my friend, but word on the street is that his wife and mother-in-law are riding him like a cash cow. Sad. Next story. Buddy's wedding day. He and his groomsmen are taking a bit of liquid courage outside the church right before the ceremony, and a cop comes into view. One of the groomsmen, perhaps pre-gaming too much, flips off and starts mouthing off to the cop, and the cop busts him for drunk in public/open containers, etc. Takes the offending groomsman to the station, mind you, not the rest of the guys drinking on the sidewalk, just the one who felt like taking it to the next level, and the ceremony keeps getting delayed and delayed, an hour and a half so that the groom can bail out his pal, just to have him there for the ceremony. Next story. I was invited as a +1 to a wedding where the bride and groom were both in polygamous relationships. When it came to speeches, they each invited another partner upstage. The bride's partner talked about how they met and gave examples of how she was a great person. He also talked about how he was friends with the groom and he was great too. Then the groom's partner got up. She talked about how they met at a party, fell in love, and that their relationship was really special. Not one word about the bride. The groom was just sitting at his chair giggling and beaming at partner two. He got up, went to hug/kiss her on stage. There were some people staring in surprise, and one particular table, his side of the family, they were really cringing in embarrassment. Next story. Tiny wedding with fewer than 20 guests, and the groom's sister, who is 37 mind you, did her damnedest to make it all about her. Highlights: complaining about how the wedding wasn't catered and that we weren't going directly to the reception to get food. Photographs take time. Outdoor wedding in the afternoon. At a park, of course we're going to take photos. Then decided to swoon on a park bench while photos were being taken so that she and her family weren't in most of the photos because they were fawning over her. This lasted at least 20 minutes. Not sure why, but she didn't find or seek medical attention if it was so bad. We were a 5-minute walk away from an abundance of food options. Then somehow made it the bride and groom's fault that she didn't eat breakfast or lunch. Literal blame was placed. That B word, no girl, no one told you not to eat, and you knew the wedding wasn't catered and when dinner was. Then took food from the groom's plate at dinner without permission because she regretted her choice of meals. Complained that the bride and groom got special desserts. There was cake in abundance for all. Chief kindly sent out special treats for the newlyweds. Then stole half from her brother. Whined to the bride as well for some of hers, whined to parents that it wasn't fair. And I haven't been to many weddings, so this is not as impressive as some crap shows I'm seeing here, but the transparent entitlement and envy were on full display throughout the event, and it just never let up. There were so few people that she really did take up all of the attention with her constant complaining and need for attention. Next story. This is not a story about my moronic friend Dave, who was pushing 30 at the time. This is a story about his current girlfriend, Sally. So Dave, a close friend of the groom's, though not in the wedding party, ran out of the ceremony during one of the readings, swearing to himself as he left the church. Everyone was quite confused, but just kinda ignored it as, you know, it was the middle of a wedding ceremony. It was almost 2 weeks before anyone saw him or heard from him after he ran out of the ceremony. Turns out that during the readings, Dave had been casually scrolling through his Facebook feed and came across a post that turned his day upside down. He had forgotten that his ex-girlfriend's best friend's wedding was that same day, and Dave had been planning on going to it to win his ex back after she had left him a year earlier for a job overseas. He was able to squeeze onto a flight last second and ended up getting to the other wedding just as the reception was starting. Things went well, and he and his ex-girlfriend ended up going on the honeymoon with the newlyweds for a week. Not abnormal. A bunch of the newlyweds' close friends also went. It was some sort of big camping trip. They, however, did not end up together. Oh, and he left his date Sally at the first wedding. Sally ended up getting drunk, taking way too much MDMA, flashed the DJ to get the microphone, she has an ample bosom, and propositioned the newlyweds for a wedding night threesome shortly after their first dance. They politely declined. She vomited. Sally and Dave ended up making a go of it and are still together almost 2 years later. So the TLDR is, don't leave the 22-year-old you just started dating at your good friend's wedding so you can go win your ex back at her best friend's wedding. Or do that? The moral here is pretty murky. Next story. Oh, hot damn. Let's see. July 3rd, 2016. A friend of my wife was getting married. Let's call her Jerkface. Now, this girl is a winner and a half, let me tell you. A rundown of her. By the way, this is a very long post. 28 years old, 5'8" or so, and 30 pounds overweight. I'm being conservative in that guesstimate. Many unfinished, done in a garage made by a guy who's been tattooing for 12 weeks sketches tattoos. Severe anger issues, extreme jealousy issues, I'm an effing princess and you will treat me as such issues, has an 11-year-old son being raised by her parents because she was too much of a train wreck to do it herself and the boy's dad wasn't in the picture. After a few years of raising the kid, the grandparents were just like, F this, we're keeping him. Still, an extreme party girl she is. Anyway, she was getting married to an extremely nice guy, little unmotivated, a lot of a pushover, and his parents were loaded. Being the baby of the family, they still doted on him like crazy, but he loved this living train wreck, so what are you gonna do? And okay, well, my wife gets saddled with the maid of honor duties, which is weird since they weren't actually all that close. Turns out Jerkface just alienates everyone. For the sake of brevity, we'll gloss over the numerous abuses on the bride's side of the wedding party leading up to the wedding and just focus on the day before and day of. As expected, Jerkface is in total bridezilla mode at this wedding that the groom's parents are paying every penny for because it's their little boy getting married finally. Yay! Oceanside cabins rented out, nice metro area a few miles down from the road, all is nice, catered. All she had to do is show up and say the words and she's done. But no, that's too easy. The night before, all the girls, 5 bridesmaids plus Jerkface, go out to the town to the bar/club and, live it up. The guy, 5 groomsmen plus grooms, stay at the cabins to sit around, get crap-faced drunk, and burn crap on the beach. The respective festivities started around 8 p.m., and all was well until about 11 p.m. when the groom's phone starts absolutely blowing up. Having left our phones in the cabin, someone goes back to get some cigarettes out of there and notices his phone is lit up. 37 phone calls, a dozen voicemails, and near 50 text messages from Jerkface. The first reaction was, OMG, something bad has happened, but no, nothing so innocuous. The bride was sending and calling and spewing thoughts along the lines of, what are you doing? Why aren't you talking to me? Are you with another B word? Stop ignoring me and answer your phone. Answer your phone now or the wedding is off. Who is this girl? Why are you doing this to me? I effing hate you. Don't ever talk to me again. Answer me. I'm going to kill you. I'm sorry. This is my wedding. Why are you doing this to me? Have fun with your new B word. And after that litany of greatest hits, the groom proceeds to argue on the phone with her for about midnight until 5 a.m. with multiple explanations and groomsmen backing up his story that we really were just sitting in a circle on the beach drinking and smoking and hanging out. Multiple hang-ups, some yelling, all good fun. And during this time, I've been on the phone some with my wife and a few of the other bridesmaids who are still saying that Jerkface has just gone effing insane and wasn't even drunk. Just crazy. They had been kicked out of the previous and only bar they went to because Jerkface was such a hysterical mess and was breaking glasses and picking fights. I'm going to finish that night right here because I eventually said F it about 4 a.m., drank most of a fifth of something, and passed out on the porch of the cabin. Fade to black. Cut to next day. Okay, it's obvious by a few hours before the wedding that tensions are running high. Jerkface and her bridesmaids are getting ready elsewhere. Groom and groomsmen are getting ready at the cabin. She is still snipping nasty things to the groom, and he's playing defense. My wife has told me that Jerkface has spent the night verbally abusing her bridesmaids too. This came into play when everyone is getting lined up, and it turns out that 3 out of the 5 bridesmaids have said F this and ditched out of there, leaving their dresses behind with notes to not be contacted ever again. So 5 groomsmen, a groom, plus 1 bride and 2 bridesmaids. No one in the wedding party was happy. No one was crying tears of joy. It was like watching someone getting walked to the gallows. or having the gallows walked down the aisle to the altar to them. Even after all that crap, the groom is still happy to be marrying Jerkface, but she is still sour and pissy and snippy to everyone. Then, where everyone could hear, the parents still in the front row proud, the loving grandparents seeing their baby get married, she tells the preacher to skip most of what we gave you, just get it legally done. Everyone heard it, and it was like someone kicked the record player in an old movie. Even aside from that, the groom, bless his big dumb heart, went ahead with it and married that twat waffle. After the ceremony, all but 2 groomsmen left rather than deal with this crap. My wife called Jerkface a selfish, psychotic idiot in front of pretty much everyone left, and we left at the same time as pretty much everyone there for the bride, within 10 minutes of the vows being finished, before pictures, before the reception. And so, they got divorced less than a week later. Jerkface has since moved across the country and is now stripping and has blocked anyone who might know her or have been involved. Her son still lives with his grandparents, having seen his mother nosedive, wants nothing to do with her. He's a great kid. And groom has finished underwater welding school and is now happily working hard and making damn good money, and has a great girlfriend who supports him rather than tears him down. In closing, F that woman. The end. Okay, everyone, that is how you tell a story. God bless. I loved every minute of that. I love wedding videos so much. What an awful woman she is. But surprisingly, that's not even some of the worst stuff I've heard. But anyway, next story. So, my dad was really bossy at mine, and it annoyed me. Nothing extreme, but Jesus, it was frustrating. He tried telling my father-in-law what to do, who wasn't having any of it. They showed up 3 hours late for family pictures, and then he tried to pull me away from my dinner to take pictures on the deck, because they had missed all their chances. I told him no. Pictures were at 2 p.m., they didn't show up until 5 p.m., and I would make time for pictures when I could. But I ordered food from this restaurant that I actually like to eat at, so I'm going to eat my effing food. Then, a similar level of bad, my wife's family, who was only my girlfriend at the time, were invited to a wedding, and she brought me along. Her parents were pissed and made more than a few scenes away from the rehearsal dinner and the actual wedding about how I was only there to shove it in their face that their daughter had decided to be a lesbian. She's not, she's bi. Next story. Beautiful day, blue sky, etc., waterfront estate. Large gardens and flowers, ceremony under rose pergola, real organ plays wedding march, bride and groom fully decked out saying their vows. Then, out of nowhere, the family bulldog wanders over, sits down beside them, vows still in progress, probably 300 people watching, and proceeds to noisily lick his balls. My sides hurt afterwards as I was laughing so hard. After the nuptials, of course. Next story. Wasn't necessarily a guest, but in a way I was that person. I believe it was 6th grade-ish, and I was going to my friend's house one day who lived about a block away. Now, his dog, Birch, was notorious for escaping. I was about 2 houses down, and I saw the dog running full tilt through the front yard and across the street. I ran after him only to be able to get a hold of him after someone grabbed him. I'll get to how someone grabbed him in a second. So, after I saw the dog, I went running after him. Turns out there was a wedding taking place a couple of houses down, and the dog picked the perfect time to escape as he ran down the aisle with the bride during the outside wedding. I yelled, "Someone grab that dog," and the groom caught him for me. I told my friend the story, and it's still something we both talk about. Next story. I wasn't actually at this wedding. I ducked out of it with the excuse that I had to work. Technically true, I just didn't mention the fact that I could have easily gotten a day off if I tried. Because my cousin is a crazy vegan hipster, and I didn't want any part of that. Fortunately, my parents brought back all of the juicy details. Skipping over the reasons why the wedding blew and was insane, I'll get to the guest behavior issue. I should mention that my first cousin was the bride in this scenario. Well, the priest announced the couple after marrying them, and it was then revealed that the couple was taking her name. Unusual, but whatever. Well, apparently, the groom's parents hadn't been told about this. They immediately got out and left in a huff, and most people didn't see them again before everyone left the hotel/area everyone was staying the next day. That's pretty bad behavior. Though arguably worse was a little while later when they sent the groom a package which contained a bunch of photos of him throughout his life and all of his baby clothes. Shredded. Next story. Wasn't at the wedding but the rehearsal dinner. Groom's father, who is a Christian pastor, gave a speech that probably managed to offend almost everyone there. Highlights include, bride must learn to cook his favorite foods for when he comes to visit, how weird it is that the groom's ex-girlfriend ended up marrying groom's older brother, ex-girlfriend and the groom dated in like 8th grade or something for like a week, how he hoped the future child they adopted wasn't black or Chinese, how marriage is only between a man and a woman, how women need to submit to their husbands. Next story. I've worked in hotels for 7 years. When I was the head of security, the groom from the New Year's Eve wedding left his wallet on the head table and someone stole it. Now, I got called to the restaurant bar because we need to cut off one very intoxicated gentleman. When I arrive on scene, one of the bridesmaids from this New Year's Eve wedding we're hosting is screaming at this guy. I'm trying to calm this woman down when the bartender tells me Mr. Drunkface has a credit card that isn't his. Well, shucks. I tell my security guard to haul off and call the cops, then step slightly away to calm down Mr. Drunkface's girlfriend. Now, where the restaurant bar is located, I can see the hotel lobby and elevator bank through some windows. The elevator opens up and out spills 6 groomsmen and the groom in their white tuxedos because New Year's Eve weddings are classy and they just tear into the bar with some mother effing purpose. So I'm all like, oh, okay, Mr. Drunkface took the groom's wallet. Mystery of the stolen wallet solved. And then the groom just punches this guy right in the face. Not a word, just waltzes up and punches him. Cops show up, Mr. Drunkface gets arrested, wedding party goes back to their ballroom, Mr. Drunkface's girlfriend is a wreck, drama, drama, drama. I mean, drunk guy couldn't even buy a drink with the stolen wallet because he was already too drunk. Then he gets punched in the face by the groom, and then he gets arrested and spends the night in jail. Hotels are fun. Next story. According to the bartender at our wedding, we were an awesome group because no one pooped in a sink, which means at some point this poor gal had been contacted with having to clean a bathroom containing a sink full of human feces. I'm sure she'd seen her fair share of drunken brawls and arguments, vomit, etc., but her own personal nadir was someone that pooped in a sink. Next story. I've told this story before. My sister-in-law was 15 when my husband and I got married. She was his best man. We gave her an invite with a +1 on it, and she invited her 17-year-old boyfriend. Kid was nice, but had a little impulse control, was very immature, came from a pretty dysfunctional family. We were having a small wedding, around 50 people, when my mother-in-law hears through the grapevine 2 weeks prior that the boyfriend's entire family is planning on attending. Mom, dad, 3 or 4 younger, equally ill-behaved siblings. My husband had met them in passing. I'd only met the boyfriend. So my mother-in-law has to call up the kid's mom and explain to her very slowly how +1 works and that only their son is invited. She's crushed at not being invited to a wedding where she doesn't know the people being married. He showed up underdressed, which whatever, I know his family isn't well off, but he practically had to be babysat the whole night. He didn't seem to understand that my sister-in-law had to sit at the head table, take pictures, etc., and he couldn't have her constant attention. He was trying to hang out at the head table during the speeches and had to be hauled back to his table. Some of our married friends were goofing off on the dance floor with their spouses, and he tries to be funny and gropes my, again, 15-year-old sister-in-law, and a couple of the guys grabbed him and had a little chat with him. They didn't last much longer, thankfully, and my sister-in-law is now married to a great guy. But that damn kid weaseled his way into a whole lot of the album photos. Next story. Not too bad because only a few people actually saw it happen. It happened like almost 10 years ago when I was still a teen, so some details are fuzzy. My uncle is a mixed, mostly black man. His now wife is a white woman from the deep south whose father is a pastor. They were dating for a few years. When they first got engaged, my aunt's parents didn't want her to marry him because think of the children, they'll be mixed, like it was the worst thing in the world. But her mom eventually got over it because my uncle is dumb and in love and super charming, and her dad seemed to be as well. Fast forward to the wedding, my aunt happened to be 3 months pregnant on her wedding day. Her mom most knew, most of my family knew, and a few friends knew, but her dad didn't know for obvious reasons. A wedding has a way to magically bring out secrets, so of course he somehow found out the real reason why they moved up the date of the wedding. Thank God it was before the actual wedding started, while we were still all in the dressing room getting ready, but he busted in there and went on a rant about how disappointed he was that not only was she having a mixed baby, but these blacks corrupted her in such a way as to have a baby out of wedlock. Saying her first husband divorced her because of blah 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 too. Literally had the poor woman in tears. Me sitting, my aunt, my mom, her mom, and the bridesmaid sitting there with our mouths open. My mom went off on him all in her New York-raised fury. The only one to say something and stop his ignorant, racist, rude-ass rant and take everyone else out of their shock. She literally backed him into a corner and me and my family had to pull her back before she got physical. My poor aunt was mortified, and her mom dragged him out of the room to talk to him, with my other aunt, my uncle's rational sister, following. I don't know what happened after because my mom made me leave, and I honestly don't know how they reconciled enough to walk her down the aisle, but he did, probably just to save face. Next story. My wedding. My parents were not invited because my dad generally hasn't behaved himself like a normally socialized human for 70 years. Last minute, they invited themselves to our destination wedding. Thank God our hotel was full. I wanted mom there but had no way to bring her without the virus. My father-in-law backed out of walking me down the aisle because he didn't want to step on dad's toes, so I walked alone. Dad, a complete narcissist, took over the dinner reception at a nice restaurant by talking about himself in his outdoor voice the entire time. Inappropriate jokes, childish behavior, generally obnoxious. Mom tried to shut him up, but he ignored her. He ignored me the entire day, but made my very small reception his own personal dinner theater. I had to apologize to the guests profusely. You could see how uncomfortable everyone was who sat near him. We deliberately prevented all toasts so he would not be allowed to take the floor entirely. Couldn't leave our own reception fast enough. He then harassed everyone for their email addresses so he could send them his political, uneducated, opinionated, daily bullcrap spam. TLDR, Dad white trashed our wedding. Next story. My aunt texted me 2 days before my wedding asking if her daughter could wear white to my wedding, tempering the request with, "She has already bought the dress, it's expensive. She doesn't have anything else to wear, it's so late, I don't know what to do." Since I also happened to have bought an expensive white dress in which to attend my wedding, my response to that question was a simple, "No, obviously not." And what do you know? Turns out my cousin did have more than just one single expensive white dress in her cavernous closet of clothes and found something to wear. I have seen so many stories, wedding stories, where other women going to these weddings, like friends, bridesmaids, relatives, want to show up in white to a wedding that isn't theirs. I don't know what it is, but weddings just bring out the crazy in people. It attracts it has a gravitational pull, and it's entertaining to read, I'll say that though. But if it happens at my wedding, I will kill that person, okay? You will not upset my wife. Anyway, next story. So, not really a guest, but the bride herself. My ex's sister's wedding is by far the worst wedding I have ever attended. Don't get me wrong, she had to plan a wedding in under a year because his side of the family could only attend that year since they were from out of the country, but it didn't excuse how terrible she acted. The wedding itself went without a hitch, but afterwards she was upset because her husband hadn't told her that she looked beautiful, even though you could tell from his face that he thought she was. When it came to pictures, her mom stumbled a bit during one of the photos, so she grabbed onto her for balance. Then she looked at her and snapped to not touch the dress, upsetting the mother. She also didn't take the photos with her close friend because she was not appropriately dressed for the wedding, even though she told him he didn't have to dress up. And all during the reception, she was texting her husband that she wanted an annulment and left early even though everyone was asking her not to. She then proceeded to have a yelling match with her mother, which resulted in them saying they were dead to each other and not speaking for 2 years. Next story. Probably late to this, but my cousin's wedding, dad's side. The day before, my mother found some suspicious text messages from a woman on my dad's phone, knowing that this would end up being a cluster F. I told her not to go to the wedding. Well, she went. She proceeds to get sloppy drunk, refuses to sit at the same table as him, and crap talks him the entire night to his family. Loudly. They end up getting into this huge blowout fight in front of the DJ booth in the middle of the reception. I've never been so humiliated in my entire life. My cousin, who didn't talk to us much in the first place, basically stopped talking to all of us afterwards. I feel really terrible about that. In the car ride home, they were both wasted and didn't understand why I was furious with them for causing a scene at someone else's wedding. They both thought I was the one being overly dramatic about it. They're still married and miserable. Next story. My biological dad and his new wife, who I had only met twice, I only speak to my dad 3 to 4 times a year, came up to the room I was getting ready in, uninvited, and she started taking pictures of me getting into my dress. Just walked in and started clicking away without a word. That was fun. I didn't let the photographer we were paying for the event take pictures of me in my underwear. I was not real happy with a woman I had literally no relationship with doing so. Then, for a wedding-related event, that would be my husband getting utterly wrecked at the hotel everyone was staying at the night before a friend's wedding. Yes, he was a groomsman, being drunk and obnoxious for hours, viciously tearing into the groom's brother for faking military service, though that was kind of warranted, and accidentally telling the father of the bride that his wife could have done better. Next story. Personally, I loved this wedding, but some other family members of mine were upset and confused. My cousin and his bride decided to do a very simple wedding in a backyard. Buffet-style catered food. Even at a bar, they served just candy. Also, there was a pool there, and we were all encouraged to wear our swimsuits. The bride and groom wore matching outfits, pants, shirt, and a tie. Yes, even the bride. The wedding was officiated by a close friend of the happy couple who arrived very, very late. And oh, did I mention it was a Pastafarian wedding? The guy who officiated the wedding wore a pasta strainer on his head. He married them by the power of Grayskull. Then the bride and groom each gave their own vows. During his vow, the groom recounted a touching story about how he once told this bride that he wasn't sure if he was really a boy, and how, much to his delight, she replied by saying she wasn't sure if she was really a girl. They wore rainbow wedding bands, It was wonderful. However, to some of the more older and more traditional members of my family, the wedding was scary. My favorite part of the wedding was the look on my grandmother's face right after she saw the wedding bands come up close. "But why did you get rainbow wedding bands? Isn't that a gay thing?" she asked. And my cousin replied, "Oh, well, we're totally gay." And my grandmother didn't know how to reply to that and just said, "Oh. So I had a wonderful time. May you be touched by his noodly appendages, ramen. Next story. He was technically a guest, so this counts. My wife's friend, to cut costs, hired a family member to DJ the wedding. Here's the fun/train wreck part that I will remember forever. This family member fancied himself to be the next Garth Brooks and decided to showcase his talents to a crowd that wasn't into country music. So all night, he would play a few hits, get people out there dancing, then he would stop the music and play a country song, most of his own creation, and literally clear the dance floor. Then he would play some more music. He would come out and dance, and he would do it again. Rinse and repeat all night long. Bride and groom couldn't do much since he was free and there was no contract. And the best/cringiest part? He would serenade his girlfriend. Edit, for clarity, I realized I forgot the best part. He wasn't playing recordings of his country songs. Oh no, he busted out an acoustic guitar and cowboy hat for this. And just to add to it, this wasn't in Texas. This was in Canada. All I'm saying is, if this was in Saskatchewan, maybe things would have gone better for the guy. They just love country music there. I have no idea. I'm just fabricating a lie right now on the internet. But anyway, guys, this was such a fun video. I love the wedding videos. I'm surprised we didn't get one where somebody proposed at a wedding. I've seen some of those and I want to strangle those people. I don't even care if it's not my wedding. If you propose at someone else's wedding, you are going to hell, okay? Every single one of them. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching, commenting. Have a really good day, and bye-bye.